Welcome to another episode of Two Old Geeks Talking. Now on the World Wide Web.
Hey, welcome back to Two Old Geeks Talking. I'm Rob.
I'm Trace.
And today we're joined by...
Ronin.
Ronin. You go.
All right. And today we're talking about...
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So let me ask each of you. So what was your first exposure to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
It was probably the 80s cartoon.
80s cartoon?
Yeah.
What about you?
I don't remember. I think it was a long time ago.
Yeah, maybe before your memory kicked in. It was probably the 2012 cartoon that we watched.
Yeah, probably.
So let me tell you my story, and please don't judge me. Think less of me.
We know we all will.
Well, it was imagine if you will, the 1980s.
Sicily.
Yes. So it's me and a friend of mine, Frank Trusty, and we're in a comic book store. And I look, and there on the shelf is a copy of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and it's a number 1 issue. And so I pick it up.
Man, you are old.
Yeah, I know. So I pick it up and I thumb through it, and it's black and white comic. Don't like black and white, but I was kind of intrigued by it because I like martial arts, and of course everything in the 1980s had ninjas in it. And so I looked through it and I thought, and just the name itself, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I thought, that's ridiculous. So I pick it up and I look at it and I'm like, nah, not for me. And set it back on the shelf. Well, if I had kept that issue, do you have any idea how much it would be worth now? Thousands and thousands of dollars. And because there was only like 3,000 of those first issues made. So we're going to talk about the comics, we're going to talk about the movies, we're going to talk about the cartoons, we'll talk a little bit about the gaming, and
I've never seen one of their games.
Never saw one of their games?
Never saw one.
Well, I'll tell you about one of their games. So, first of all, it started back in the 80s, late 80s, like I said. Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird. It's really an American success story. So they're just two guys. They take a couple $1,000s out of savings, borrow some money from a family member, and they print up 3,000 copies of this new comic. And their art styles were very similar. And they just thought it was funny. It was kind of, the first issue was kind of a homage to Daredevil. Do you know why?
Well, they kind of mocked him because instead of having the hand, they had the foot as villains, and there was multiple different things, but that's the one thing that I remember that stood out the most.
Yeah, and then they had, instead Daredevil's teacher was Stick, and their teacher was Splinter. And then Daredevil got his powers through some radioactive material, and they got their powers the same way. And both Kevin and Peter were big fans of Frank Miller, and he was on Daredevil at the time. And there was tons of ninjas in that series as well. So that was really what really kind of sparked that off. And so they put it out there, and they had a little money left over after they printed it up, so they run an ad in like a little local comic magazine. And so a lot of the comic book shops saw it, and they ordered it. Well, they sold out the first issue, and I think by the second issue they went from 3,000 to 15,000.
So wasn't it like all their mask in the very first comic book red? Like that was the only color in the whole comic book? Yeah,
the only time you really saw their mask was on the cover. Because the comic was black and white.
Oh, okay.
So it was really hard to tell. But all the turtles looked exactly the same, and they all had red masks. So the only way you could really tell them apart was, besides their attitudes, was the weapons they carried. Okay. Now, you had an interesting concept on how the weapons had a meaning to each turtle. Would you like to elaborate on that, sir?
Yeah, so, you see, Michelangelo, he has a lack of focus, and he has a very good sense of humor, even though he gets the nunchucks that requires focus as well.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Leonardo, he
You got the swords.
Yeah, Leonardo, he has swords, even though he's like the most leader.
Mm-hmm. And you got bow staff for Donatello.
Yeah, bow staff for Donatello. Donatello's more technical. He's more into tech, even though he got a 6 foot wooden stick.
Yeah. You'd think he'd have something other than a stick, right? And then the size for Raphael.
Size are used for defense only, even though he's the most hot-headed and violent one.
Yeah.
That wants to do that, even though he those weapons are only for defense.
Yeah, it makes you wonder whether Peter and Kevin thought of that ahead of time, or if it was just happenstance. So one of the cool things that really kicked off the Turtles was the toy line by Playmates.
Right. And did the toy line come out before this cartoon?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, what happened was Playmates approach, the Ninja Turtles really took off immediately.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's why it's an American success story. It was like a little black and white independent comic. Ninja Turtles was made by a company called Mirage, and it was made by Image for a while, and it's made by IDW now. But I mean, for almost 40 years, every generation has had some contact.
Right.
I don't know, you would have to live in a cave to never have heard of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
But they were approached by Playmates to make the toys. And so they said, well, we're not going to make the toys unless you got a cartoon. And then so the cartoon people said, well, we're not going to make the cartoon unless you got the toys. And so just everything just come together at the same time, where the toy line started and the cartoon started, and just everything gelled there at one time, and it was just this immediate huge success. Did you have any? I know you weren't alive in the 80s. Did you have any of the Turtles? Did our little brother Matthew, did he have any? I don't think he did.
I don't think any of us did.
You know, the Turtles were always on my peripheral, but I really didn't get involved in them or enjoy them until he come along. Right. You know, we there was a couple of cartoons we watched together, Samurai Jack, which we'll do a video on at some point, and then the 2012 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. But the cartoon that come out in '87, you know, I look back on it now, it's kind of they look kind of chubby and kind of cheesy and kind of kid-like, and lots of times they didn't use their weapons, they used the environment around them to fight. And if you like that cartoon, that's great. I think sometimes you look back on stuff and it's nostalgic, and that's the reason you like it. But you know, Playmates wanted to make the mask different, so each turtle would look different. So they'd give a different shade to each mask. Plus, they couldn't leave it there. They had to have belt buckles with the first initial of each turtle on there to try to separate it there.
I never noticed that.
And so the 80s was real popular. It lasted like 10 seasons, and you know, for an entire generation, that was their Turtles. And then after the 80s, you had the 2003 cartoon. And did you watch any of those? Any of you guys?
I don't think so.
I've seen a few.
I might have.
I've seen a few of them. The first season really tries to stick to the comic book pretty good, but they just really wasn't my cup of tea. I really didn't care about the 80s ones. Really didn't care about the ones after that.
Now the ones in the 80s, they actually would throw in characters like Usagi Yojimbo, right? Mm-hmm. Now, did they do that with the ones that came out in 2000?
I think Usagi Yojimbo's been in every interpretation of the Turtles.
Oh, that's good.
Except maybe the last one.
Now, how did they make that connection?
Well,
I know I'm kind of getting off of the topic.
No. You're good. It's Peter Laird and Kevin Eastman would go to these Comic Cons, and they were independent. So independent means you're not Marvel, DC, or maybe Image.
Right.
They're one of the part of the big three. And so, by a self-published small comic book producer, and writer and artist, you run into people that are similar. And so they ran into Stan Sakai, who had Usagi Yojimbo, who happens to be an anamorphic character. That means like a character that looks like an animal, and set in ancient Japan as well. So I mean, it was like peanut butter and jelly as far as putting those together. So there's been several crossovers between Usagi and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And it's funny because most people know Usagi through Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but I know Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles really through Usagi Yojimbo, which I'm a huge fan of. So they come out with a live-action movie back in 1990. And what was your thoughts on that?
Well, I wasn't a fan. Not that I wasn't a fan of the movie. I've never been a fan of Teenage Ninja Mutant Turtles.
Right.
I actually had watched it,
Yeah.
but years after it had already released. I think the one that I watched might have been the second one with
Secret of the Ooze.
Was that the one with Vanilla Ice in it?
Yeah. So he was only familiar with the cartoon. He had a vague idea there was a comic that it was based on. And so recently I showed him that old movie.
Right.
Yeah, so what was your thoughts on it?
It was good to the point where Splinter, he was really detailed, but not that good with voice.
Yeah, voices do play a part. Like the voices from the 80s.
Yeah.
Might not have matched up with the ones with the movies, and the ones from the movies probably didn't match up with the ones you watched. When did it?
It was just like when you always think of Batman, you think of Kevin Conroy.
Exactly.
In another 10 years, somebody will probably think of another voice actor.
Yeah.
For him, he's used to the 2012 cartoon, so him going back to that. It was funny because we were watching it, and he's like, "How would you say this was?" I said, "That's about 30 years old." You're like, "Yeah, I can kind of tell." Yeah. But at the time, to be honest with you, there wasn't a ton of superhero movies. The rubber suits that they made were incredible. First of all, Jim Henson did the first one, the second one, and he wasn't there in the third one. And you can obviously tell Jim Henson wasn't involved in the third one. So really, all turtle movies go like this. The first one's the best, next one's a little less, next one's a little less, and it goes on from there. But the first one, was pretty true to the comic book, and they tried to make it somewhat gritty, even though it was geared toward kids. I mean, Shredder gets killed in a garbage truck compactor, at the end, and so, I mean, there was some adult elements thrown in there, and then they made it a little more lighthearted in the second one, and then they totally went off the rails in the third one. But it's pretty amazing to go back and watch those, because they would never do anything like that now. Everything's CGI.
Right.
In fact, that's what they did. They went and did 2 CGI movies. So Michael Bay, was the producer in these, who's known for Transformers.
Right.
They decided to make the Turtles in a new live-action movie, and had CGI live-action characters. Did you watch any of those?
No.
I've watched every one of the movies.
Really?
Just because I'm a geek, not because I'm a huge fan. I am now because of him, but at the time I just watched them because when you're a geek, at that time there wasn't a whole lot of geeky stuff out there, so you just absorb what you can get your hands on.
Now these did not look anything like the comic books, the 80s cartoons, or nothing. These look like something that, I mean, they were like totally different. I mean, if it wasn't for the shells, you would not even know they were turtles.
Well, they were going to, originally Michael Bay was going to make them aliens and not mutants.
Oh, okay.
And then that script leaked, and it got so much criticism online that they tweaked it and tried to go back to their original origins. But have you watched any of those, the Michael Bay ones with the CGI turtles?
I have not.
Yeah, you didn't. You're still. Your life is still complete. You didn't miss anything. So, besides the Playmates toy lines, NECA has started making Ninja Turtles.
Okay.
I mean, even yesterday I was in Walmart, and there was a Casey Jones based on the cartoon.
Oh yeah.
And then it had a figure of Splinter and Shredder from the 1990 movie. I mean, really nice figures, and then they had some nice price tags on too. I think the single figure was 40, and the multi-pack might have been 60. And but it's funny that they're still making. I mean, here it is, 2022, and they're still making figures of that 1990 movie.
Well, one of the games I've played, I don't want to say recently, but it hasn't come out recently, is Injustice. Well, throughout the years or throughout time, you can get different skins and different characters. Well, they've thrown the turtles in there. Do you know that?
No.
Oh yeah. And when you fight with them, you can push a particular button, and different brothers will come out.
Oh yeah.
And then the finishing move is pretty badass. And like I said, I'm not a turtle fan, but it's kind of fun to see that nostalgia thrown into more of a modern game.
Yeah. Well, so the 2012 cartoon is really when Ninja Turtles clicked with me.
Okay.
So after we'd finished Samurai Jack, I wanted to watch something with him. And so I thought, well, we'll try this out. Well, he just really enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed it. I think I've got him some Ninja Turtle stuff in the past. And the 2012 is to me the best interpretation of the Turtles at all. Live action movies or any of the cartoons. First of all, Splinter, he looks at him more as a son. He looks at him as not just a mentor.
Now, this isn't the same as that, is it? Like this looks more like the '80s version. That
well,
I mean,
the thing about the 2012 version is that they try to take all the past versions of the Turtles and put them together in a way that would complement all the past versions and yet be new. But Splinter was the best. The voice acting was spot on. The action was incredible, and the humor really hits home. So, like when we're watching them together, and we're still watching them, even though the series has ended, he hasn't seen them all. I mean, we'll laugh out loud. I mean, the humor just really, really hits home.
Right.
And so, to me, that's the best version. They even had some comics that went along with that. IDW put out some comics that went along with the 2012 version, and they're funny. I mean, I'll read them. They're just good, innocent, fun, and
I kind of like that art style too. I don't know what it is about it.
It was 120 some episodes, and it was CGI Turtles. CGI Turtles had been done in a movie called just Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It was released theatrically, and it was good. I watched it, and but that right there, to me, that's the best Turtles. They took them all and made them teenagers again.
Right.
And they made Casey Jones teenager.
Well, see,
they made April O'Neil teenager.
When I was looking up April O'Neil and that young lady's popped up because I was putting pictures up on our Instagram.
Yeah.
I was like, who is that? Because I wasn't familiar with it.
Yeah.
So I had to look into it to see who this was, and I found that she was from this iteration.
Yeah.
And it's just really weird because April O'Neil has always been put out as like a bombshell.
Yeah.
So to see her as a little girl, I was like, all right.
Well, if you get a chance to watch those, and I have them that I can lend them to you, then you'll really, really like it. So, let's see what else. Let's see. Recently, they come out with a female Ninja Turtle.
Okay.
In the comics. Now, this isn't really the first female Ninja Turtle.
They added her to the group,
they added her to the group,
female.
and I'll explain to you a little bit how. First of all, the first female Ninja Turtle was Venus de Milo. There was a TV series called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: The Next Mutation, or maybe it was just called Turtles: The Next Mutation.
Okay.
But it was horrible. Don't watch it. It's terrible. Just if you ever think about watching it, just bash your head against the wall. You'll be happier. So they invented a female turtle. I think it lasted a couple of seasons, but it was terrible. They wanted to introduce one in the series, so she was a human, and an entire town got mutated, and she happened to get mutated as a turtle, and so her name's Jennica, and this is the first issue of it, and they had variant covers, and they actually had a variant cover for the Lexington Comic-Con that we were at.
Oh, really?
And I've seen this sell online for $70, and it's
Now,
I
does
wouldn't
she
say
still exists?
Yeah, she still exists, but I don't know. I don't think she's in every.
So she came about a lot like Smurfette. The villain was trying to
yeah,
create his
yeah,
own
yeah,
turtles, and
yeah.
that's how she came about.
So here you can have that. The first appearance of Jennica. Now all your friends can be jealous. You can also have this. We watched that first Ninja Turtle movie, but this has got all 3 of them, plus the CGI one, so you can watch that too.
Cool.
You can have that too. Oh man, free
You can
gifts.
keep it?
Yes, you can keep it
Oh.
forever and ever. So, you remember, before we close out, you remember how the Dark Knight really
Kind of reestablished.
Batman?
Right. Yeah.
You know, Frank Miller did that, and really Batman today is still influenced on that Dark Knight story, which is how old?
Oh, years. Almost a decade.
Well, they did something similar with the Turtles, and they called it Last Ronin. Ronin happens to be your name.
Yeah.
And I'm not giving you this. but anyway, it was I think it was a 5-issue series, and they had pitched this idea way back at the beginning of Turtles,
Okay.
just as kind of like a story telling you how everything ends.
Yeah.
And then so Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird was involved in it, and so it just kind of got put on the back shelf until recently, when they decided to make these Last Ronin comics. So they'd actually done some artwork, you know, way back in the day that appears in these comics. And so what it is, and without ruining it for anybody that hasn't watched it, it come out in about 2020, is all the turtles are dead except for one.
Yeah, and the one that lasted
And
is
the one that at first you don't know who that one is, because you know your turtles by your weapons, and this guy carries all the weapons. And you know your turtles by the mask.
right.
And this one wears a black mask. So for a while, you don't know who it is, and I won't ruin it. But so Master Splinter's dead, all the turtles but one is dead, and he's continued to mutate as time has gone on.
Ah.
So he's a lot stronger, a lot faster, a lot tougher than he was when he was younger. And so he decides to take out the Foot Clan.
Now,
And
is
just
this like a post-apocalyptic?
Post-apocalyptic,
kind of thing?
yeah,
See, that's
yeah.
even better.
So, I mean, April O'Neil's in here. She was in an explosion. She's lost a couple limbs. Casey Jones is gone. And Casey and April had a child together, and that child's full grown. And so I love stories that bring my characters to the end. So you got like Dark Knight with Batman. You had Old Man Logan with Wolverine.
Mm-hmm.
You had there was a Punisher at the end and Daredevil at the end. I just love it when they take a character and wrap it up, especially with me being old and I'm getting ready to wrap things up myself. It's nice to see them wrap my characters up. So with The Last Ronin, that's a great story and a great finish to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And it just so happens that it was so popular. I mean, these are hard to come by and very expensive, and just keep rising in price. It was so popular that they're going to do a little prequel series to this, because this
prequel to that series.
a prequel to this, like showing they already showed how all the other turtles died in this series.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to talk about how this one surviving turtle survived, and so I look forward to it. It's supposed to come out this year.
Maybe in the future they'll like do a graphic novel and put them all together.
Oh, let me tell you, I'm glad you said that. Somebody with some incredible skill got on YouTube, and you need to check this out. And I may stick a link. Yeah, I'll stick a link down in the description.
Okay.
So, yeah, you'll have to check it out. But what it is, it's like the first few pages of the first issue of Last Ronin.
Okay.
And somebody did a CGI of it.
Oh yeah.
And this guy is so talented.
Huh.
So I mean, it's beautifully done. And so you see the surviving turtle. He failed at a mission, and he's getting ready to do Hair Carrier or Sepulchre, however you say it.
Right.
And
That'd
so
be hard to do with a shell on.
yeah, it's tough. Yeah, it's tough. He wasn't successful. I'll spoil it for you. But yeah, it was just so good. And I'm just watching that thinking, man, if they made a movie that looked like this, do you know how much money it would make?
Right.
So now they're actually kicking.
Hint.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of fans that say you need to make a Last Ronin movie, but they need to get these guys to do it, because if they made that for free as fans,
Right.
I can't imagine what they would do with the budget.
Yeah.
because the voice acting in it was good and the CGI was awesome. So, is that everything?
I think so.
All right, man, you done?
I'm done. You
All
done?
right. You done? All right, I think we're done.
All righty.
We're done.
See you later.
We're done. We're done.
Poke me with a fork. I'm done.
We're done. We're done.
We're done. We're done.
I'm done.